What's up, everybody? It's Corey, host of the Grease Pole Podcast, back with this week's edition of the Performance Tiers. Fucking nail biter from hell. Nail biter from hell. This in the Indianapolis game, right? Are absolutely the tightest games we've been in all year. Fucking Chicago. And it's first half completely out of sync. Birds look like shit in the first half, and then start to pull away, win number 13 on the year, and so here we are, and it's Dallas week part 2, leading into Gardner Minshew's start on Christmas Eve, Captain fucking America. So before we move on to Dallas week entirely, let's close out week 15 with our performance tiers against the Chicago Bears. And if you need a reference point as to why the following tiers are named what they are, click the link that you see above, and that will take you to the introduction to the performance tiers and give you the background on why each tier is named what it is. As we start with each and every single week, with Christ of the Birds, the Weapon X tier, the Brian Dawkins tier, and we got Devontae Smith here with 3 catches on the day for 104 yards with an average of almost 35 yards per reception in the first half. And he finished with 5 for 126 and an average of just over 25 yards, And as we'll discuss, A.J. Brown had the better stat line of the two on the afternoon, but when Jalen Hurts had nothing going in the first half and Jalen Johnson was draped all over A.J. Brown, it was Devontae Smith that showed up for the Birds. And what really put Smith's day over the top was that a few of his catches came on third down when the Eagles couldn't get anything going offensively. You know, he moved the chains, he extended drives, and he gave the offense a chance. He's really coming into his own with A.J. Brown opposite him. Defenses obviously have to account for both guys, and this was another impressive outing by the 2021 first-round pick. And unlike last week against the Giants, he didn't find pay dirt this week, but he still shows up with an appearance in the Dawkins tier. As well as the trio of Haason Reddick, Josh Sweat, and Javon Hargrave. 2 sacks in the first half for Reddick and Sweat. And Hargrave finished the day with 2 as well. And much like the Indianapolis game, the defense absolutely kept the Eagles in this game. Jonathan Gannon's unit finished with 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 9 tackles for a loss. All 3 of these dudes, Reddick, Sweat, Hargrave, have been nothing but consistent all year long. And it goes to show that effort and attention, as we say, that Howie Roseman has given to the defensive line and the dividends that it's paid. It's fucking hard to have a defense that can change the game in this era of offensive-friendly football, and the Birds are among the few teams in the NFL that do. This rotation of defensive linemen is going to be a problem for any offensive line to contain in the playoffs, and it's arguably been the most consistent group on the team this season, and it's, you know, you got various members that have become a mainstay in the Dawkins tier this week with the trio of Reddick, Sweat, and Hargrave. Charlottesville represent the Chris Long tier. Here we'll find A.J. Brown. And while A.J. put up better numbers than Devontae, as we said, A.J. appears in the Chris Long tier rather than the Dawkins tier because when the offense was fairly stagnant in the first half, A.J. had been relatively contained, at least by his standards, right? And, you know, you see him, he finishes the game with 9 catches for 181 yards, which is a career high for A.J. Brown. But he had a rough go of shit against Jalen Johnson early on. Like, 11 had to work this week. And when the offense needed a big play, he and his BFF, Jalen Hurts, were out of sync in the first half. And he redeemed himself and this game thanks to the amount of targets he gets. And look, he did produce, but it's a good thing that Devontae was on when A.J. wasn't. That's the beauty of having 2-star receivers, and it's also why Smith goes in the Dawkins tier this week and Brown appears here in the Chris Long tier. Along with Kayvon Wallace, surprise appearance. Look, as we discussed last week after the Reed Blankenship injury, and it looks like he's coming back this week against Dallas, but Wallace was the big question mark on the back end, but he looked good in this game. He came up and made a couple tackles, finished tied for the team lead with TJ Edwards with 9 on the day. And while this was a good game out of Wallace, it's going to have to happen again. Against Dallas, Reed Blankenship's probably not going to be, he's going to be on a snap count more than likely, and you've got home field advantage up for grabs. So in the meantime, though, he looked good against Chicago, and surprisingly good after him being the asterisk on the defense that you look at. And so this week we've got him in the Chris Long tier for the Chicago game. Nelson Aguilar tier. And I hate to do this to our guy here, but first half Jalen Hurts, it was a clusterfuck in the first half for QB1 as he, he habitually overthrew and underthrew guys. He completed 50% of his passes in the first half, and worst of all, he threw those 2 picks when he entered the game with only 3 on the year. And it's not that there's such thing as a good interception, right? But both of these were pretty fucking ugly, right? And Hurts finished 22 of 37 for 315 yards. He had 0 passing touchdowns, but he did have 3 rushing touchdowns. So, look, you cut Jalen some slack here because he's been so goddamn special all season. And let's just hope that this shit's out of his system. But on the rare occasion that he isn't effective through the air, he's still effective on the ground, which is what makes him so good and why he's in the conversation at the forefront, even despite missing a game or 2 for the NFL MVP. He got it together ultimately against Chicago, but this team has started games hot on a weekly basis, especially in the second quarter. You hear it every game. That's what this team's become known for, is fucking exploding in the second quarter. And he set the bar high for himself going forward. There's expectations now for Jalen Hurts. And the first half didn't exactly meet them, and that's why he makes a rare appearance here this week in the Nelson Aguilar tier. Which takes us to the creme de la cheeks, the worst of the worst, the Chip Kelly tier. I hate to do this to our guy as well, but what a guy, Coach Sirianni and Shane Steichen, with specifically to play calling, particularly in the first half. As we said, Jalen Hurts was struggling through the air in the first half, and rather than switch it up and adjust, Miles Sanders didn't have his first carry of the game until around 6.5 minutes remaining in the first half. That's fucking inexcusable considering the run Sanders has been on in the season he's had. And as we've said before, he's the most effective when you call his number somewhat consistently. And instead, we were back to Kenny Gainwell serving as a third down back and seemingly attempting to force the passing game when it wasn't there rather than just allow the flow of the game to find it. And that's usually a strength of Sirianni and Shane Steichen, but they seem to be stubborn as fuck here. And it could have cost the Eagles the game, right? This Rain Man shit. And again, like Jalen Hurts, they've earned the benefit of the doubt this year, but get it all out of your system now because Dallas week is upon us, and while we were able to escape with the win after almost hitting a huge pothole, be better going forward and adjust as you have to, just like you've done all year long. It's that simple. And with that, you look ahead to Dallas on Christmas Eve in Jerry World, right? And of all the meetings between the Eagles and Cowboys over the years, this game on Christmas Eve, it could be among the most intense we've ever seen. And it's going to lose a little bit of luster with Jalen Hurts not playing. But you got Gardner Minshew in there, who's always, if nothing else, entertaining. He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not even the drop-off from Carson and Nick Foles, okay? But, hey, at least Gardner Minshew has a chance to prove Chris Sims right, And, the offense isn't going to look any... Gardner Minshew could have done this shit. Well, here's your spot. There you go, motherfucker. So let's see if Chris Sims is accurate. He's full of shit, but regardless. Let's not forget about Jeff Garcia, right? That was a fun little run, and it was Christmas Day in 2006 when, the then Eagles backup led the Birds to a win over the Cowboys in Dallas to clinch a playoff spot and ultimately win the NFC East as well. Dallas Goedert's been activated off IR, so he'll be available to play, which puts the full arsenal of weapons at the disposal for Gardner Minshew. The Birds are undefeated on the road. They're the only team in the NFL that can say that. And it's the second time ever in team history that we've ever been 13-1. The other was in 2004 when we won the NFC Championship. And look, you credit the Bears. They didn't go down easy with this game at times looking eerily similar to the Washington loss there for a stretch. But, with Dallas dropping one to Dougie P and the Jags, home field advantage is up for grabs with a win over the Cowboys. And from Micah Parsons to Dak Prescott's brother, Dallas has been talking that shit, and there's a plethora of bulletin board material at the Birds' disposal like they fucking need it. And credit this team. Sirianni wore the Beat Dallas shirt last year. Not a peep out of this roster, right? They're not firing back. We'll see your ass on Saturday, plain and simple, at 4:25. And this Eagles team is built different. It's special. The coaches know it. The players feel it. Hell, so do we. But you've got to prove it in Dallas on Christmas Eve. It's plain and simple. Do what you've done all year long, Eagles. Close it out. It's that simple. What were your thoughts on the Chicago game? Give us your thoughts on Gardner Minshew, Uncle Rico, starting on Saturday, the Christmas Eve clash against the Dallas Cowboys, the Antichrist. Let us know your thoughts on that going forward. Hit the subscribe button if you like the content. Much more coming your way as we approach the playoff push and the draft ahead. That's my cocaine if you've been a listener of the pod for the last 2 years. The draft is my crack, and it's not that far off, people. So we're about to hit you with a ton of brand new content, and then we have the mothership as well. The mothership, the podcast, each and every Monday. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you podcast, live on this YouTube page as well is where it will drop that night. Hit the subscribe button and stay safe on Christmas. Scream, throw a few back, celebrate with your family, and root like hell for the squad to put it to Dallas on Christmas Eve. We will see you on Monday for the next episode of the pod. As always, go Birds.